thank you everyone for joining again. I know you all probably have some busy schedules, so welcome and thank you for joining the NetSuite user group. My name is Will Homsy. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the electronic bill pay suite app. Okay. So here we go. All right, our agenda today, I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction about myself. After that, we'll look into a process flow of electronic bank payments, and then we're going to hop into the system, do a little bit of a demo. That's going to look like our setup of our company bank details, as well as setting up our vendor for ACH payments. We will run through ACH processing, as well as positive pay processing. All right, and then after that, we'll have a little bit of a wrap up and Q&A. So a little bit of an introduction about myself. Like I said, my name is Will Homsy. I'm a consultant here at Oasis Solutions. I have been with Oasis for just over 7 months now. Prior to that, though, I have had 3 years experience in the NetSuite ecosystem. I originally started my career in sales over at Oracle. Eventually decided I wanted to do a career switch and move over to NetSuite and consult. I would like to consider myself an electronic bank payment subject matter expert. Just a little bit of information. We do have a couple other fantastic consultants on our team that know about electronic bank payments, but more recently, we've had a bunch of our customers come to us and implement this, and I've been leading those projects. I'm an alum of UMass Amherst, and I am based here in Boston, Massachusetts. So let's take a look at our solution overview. Up top here, we'll see a couple of the different transactions that we can use the electronic bill pay suite app to process, right? So we have vendor bills and employee expenses, customer refunds, and customer payments. If we look down towards the bottom part here, we have a little bit of a process flow of the electronic bill pay suite app. So part of it looks like setting up, right? We're going to go over this in detail, setting up our company bank details, which are your banks that you would pay these bills out of, as well as setting up our vendors for ACH payments. After that, we go into setting up some standard or custom file formats. Sometimes this depends on your bank and which bank you use. There are cases where we can use the out-of-the-box file formats for ACH, and we don't need to have development step in and create a custom file. However, sometimes we do. There is a little bit of a caveat here. If you are on a Suite Success in SKU in NetSuite, this whole Suite app itself is actually free for you. However, if you are on something other than a Suite Success SKU in NetSuite, we would have to purchase advanced electronic bank payments. That has a couple different functionalities within it, but the main one is it allows you to create a custom file format. You don't need to worry about this if you're on a Suite Success SKU, though. You should have that functionality, and it's free. I think that's one of the key points here, right? This is a free Suite app for Suite Success installs. And really the only cost associated with it is our consulting and any development that goes into that. Once we set up either the standard or custom file formats, we look at processing our payments, those files. We can then manage our electronic bank payments, things like reversing it. If we make a mistake, we can schedule these batches and batch approvals. You can either, with this output, you can either take it, download it to your desktop, and then upload it straight to your client portal with the bank, or we can also set up an SFTP connection where we'll have it schedule and send straight from NetSuite into your banking platform. And then lastly, you can send those payment notifications, those vouchers to your vendors. Okay. So with that, we're going to get into a demo. So let's hop into our our ecosystem here. All right, so right here, we're on our main page of NetSuite. First thing we need to do is we need to start setting up the electronic bank payments module. And this is going to look like our company bank details. So in order to get here, we're going to go to Payments, Setup, and Bank Details. So we'll take a look at this. All right, and in this system, we currently have two set up. So if you pay from multiple different GL accounts for your bills through ACH, each GL account would have its own company bank details record here. All right, so we have two set up. If you want to create a new one, you can click this new company bank details tab, and it'll pull up a bank details blank form. Okay, here, you just put in the name of what this company bank details record would look like. I generally just use the name in your GL account or your chart of accounts. And then from here, we just need to select a bank account, okay? Which GL account you're going to link it to, all right? There's a legal name, a print company name as well. And then over here, we need to select our EFT file template, okay? A lot of times the ACH CCD PPD format will work for customers, but based on your bank specifications, sometimes we have to loop in development and we need to create a custom file format, at which point we could select that. Same thing with Positive Pay. We have a couple out of the box solutions, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, RBC. More likely than not, though, we would have to loop in development and create a custom Positive Pay format, which is pretty simple, right? And then lastly, we have this file cabinet location. This is a mandatory field here in NetSuite. When you download the electronic bank payment suite app, what it actually does is it creates a file within your file cabinet through Documents, Files, File Cabinet. It will be called something like EFT File Repository, and all this this record is looking for is the internal ID of your file. So what it does is once you process those EFT payments, that output, the text file or CSV file, depending on what your bank requires, it just hosts a copy of it right here in your file cabinet, okay? Once you do that, you can save it. I'm just gonna bring you into one that's already created so you can kind of see what it will look like. And apologies, guys, this is a demo account. This in no way, shape, or form is reflective of the electronic bill pay suite app being slow. It's just the demo account itself, okay? So once you save that and you go ahead and select a EFT template as well as a Positive Pay template, you're gonna notice that there are some sub-tabs down here for EFT and Positive Pay as well. What this is looking for is your banking information, so things like your immediate origin, the routing number of the bank account, the actual account number, your company ID, and then your immediate destination name, okay? If you don't know these things, you could reach out to your bank and get that information so that we could populate this record. And then lastly, the only other thing that you would have to select is your bank account type. The options in NetSuite would be checking or savings. More likely than not, it's going to be a checking account, right? And then lastly, our Positive Pay, it's just looking for your bank account number. So you could easily just copy and paste from here into your Positive Pay account number as well, okay? So that's setting up your company bank details. Again, as a reminder, if you're paying out of multiple GL accounts, you have to set up a bank account or a bank details record for each one. So let's take a look at our vendor and how we would go about setting this up, right? So on your vendor, once you download the electronic bill pay suite app, you're going to notice that there's a bank payment details sub-tab on the vendor record. So setting it up for ACH is fairly simple, right? We just have to select this EFT bill payment checkbox. And I'll tell you what that does in a minute once we start looking at our bills. And then lastly, we have our bank details. This would be your vendor's bank, right? We can easily, if you have a bunch of vendors who are doing this, we have the ability to do this via a CSV import. But if you have one-off scenarios where you're adding a brand new vendor and you need to add their bank details, you can come down here and just click New Bank Details. By clicking this button, it's going to pull up a bank details record for you to fill out for your vendor, right? So again, very similar to your company bank details, you just need to fill out a name of their bank, and then you need to select the payment file format. If you're using a ACH CCD PPD format, this is what you would select. If we have to create a custom file format for you, then you would select the custom file format that we have created. Down here, we see type, primary or secondary. So if this is the first bank that you're linking to your vendor, you need to select primary. After that, you can add as many secondary banks as you need if there are multiple bank accounts that the vendor would use. We see bank account number, right? This is pretty straightforward. This is your vendor's bank account number. And then a little misleading, it says bank number, but this is their routing number that you would fill in. Based on what you fill in on the bank account number and the routing number, the country check, the bank code, and the processor code, those automatically populate. And then lastly, similar to the company bank details, you need to select the bank account type. Okay, you can see checking or savings. Again, more likely than not, it's going to be a checking account. So we'll hop out of here. This is our vendor. I've gone ahead and I've already created a couple bills that are ready to be paid for EFT. Again, if you're going to add a bill, you can come up here to this page with the plus icon and click the bill, or you can simply go to transactions, payables, and then enter bills. And it'll bring up a blank bill screen. Like I said, I already created one, right? So once you enter your bill, you just need to enter information like which vendor it's going to. Your default AP account should populate right here. You can fill in other things like a memo, as well as the date, the posting period, and what the due date is. We have our classification down here. The subsidiary should automatically populate based on whichever vendor you select and whichever subsidiary the vendor is linked to. You can do things like class as well. And then we notice that we have this for electronic bank payment checkbox. Now, when I select Test Oasis vendor on the bill, this will automatically populate as checked. And that's because it sources from the vendor record right here on the bank payment details tab, this EFT bill payment checkbox. It's very simple though. If there's a one-off scenario where maybe they're normally paid through ACH, but you're going to go ahead and you're going to cut a check for them when you're entering the bill, all you have to do is just uncheck this box and you could cut a check for them as opposed to processing an ACH payment. Okay. And then lastly, with the bill, you just need to add in any items or expenses that pertain to the bill itself. Okay. So we can see that this bill is open, right? So then we'll go in and we're going to start to pay this via ACH. So I pulled this screen up, but to get to this screen, you just have to go to payments, payment processing, and then bill payment processing, and it'll pull up this EFT bill payments record. Okay. Up top here, we see some search filters, right? So if you drop down the bank account, you're going to see the names of your company bank details that you had previously set up. All right. So we're going to choose this bank. You'll notice that the bank account format, this is the file format that's linked to this bank details record. That populates, as well as the subsidiary and then the currency as well. You would have to select your AP account. All right. So this is the AP account that's listed on the bill itself right here. And then we have some other search filters. Okay. So once you select your bank account and your AP account, you're going to notice that some transactions start to populate, right? If you want, more likely than not, right, you're not going to just have 8. You may have hundreds, or depending on the size of your business, you may even have thousands down here. So we can use these search filters to filter by transaction type. Again, I went over this in the process flow. You can also refine it by the due date from and to refine your results for the transactions down beneath. And then lastly, you can also filter by vendor. So maybe you only want to process ACH payments for a particular vendor. You see these two vendors in here, that's because these are the two vendors that are associated with the transactions down beneath. Underneath our search filters, we have some payment information, right? Date to be processed and posting period. These will auto default based on the day that you're running this. You can always change this right here. We have an EFT file reference note. This is a mandatory field. I like to think of it as kind of like a memo. So if you're running a batch monthly, you could just say something along the lines of June ACH batch. If it's weekly, you could type out the week that you're processing this batch. So I'm just going to type one in. And then lastly, we have this aggregate by payee. If we check this checkbox, what it does is if I were to select multiple bills for the Granger vendor in the output, it would create one line item for the sum of whatever bills I selected. If you keep it blank, then it'll add in the output a line item for each individual bill with its associated amount. Okay. As I start to select these different bills to process, you'll notice that the number of transactions and the total payment amount will auto calculate. Okay. So we're just going to run one here for the test Oasis vendor. So I'm going to select this bill, and then we're going to come up here and we're going to click submit. Okay. What this is going to do now is it's going to start processing these payments, right? So this bill, the beauty of NetSuite electronic bill pay is we don't actually have to create a bill payment. This SuiteApp will create the payment or the bill payment for you. So we see this payment file administration screen. All we have is the edit, the back, and the refresh button. What this is doing is in the background, it's starting to create that payment, mark it for payment, and then it's going to start creating that file output that you would then either manually upload to your banking site, or if you're using an SFTP connector, we can schedule it to push from NetSuite straight into your bank. So this generally only takes about a minute or two to process. We can see how this screen has already changed. We've already marked the transaction. Down here, we see this document number. If we pulled this up, this is going to be the bill payment itself. Okay. We'll refresh this one more time. We can see now that this is starting to create the payment file itself. Okay. And again, it generally just takes about a minute or two. And now under this file reference, we see this preview. You can download it, you can edit. This is your text or CSV, depending on what your bank specifies. This is the output, okay? So if we take a look at this, right? This will pull up the text file. This is what you would then download, and you could go ahead and you could upload this to your banking site. Again, we have the ability to do SFTP, where it pushes straight from NetSuite into your banking site. Okay. Couple options that you have here, right? Reversing payments. Maybe you made a mistake. You could reverse this payment. It will then reopen the bill. It will delete the bill payment. And then we have the email payment notification. This is so you can send your remittance information to your vendor. So if we click on this screen right here, it's going to pull up another screen with any bills that you added in this batch, right? We only added one for the Test Oasis vendor. This email right here, it sources from the vendor record itself, okay? It is a free form text field, so if you needed to change the email address, you could change it very easily right here by typing that in. You can also CC or BCC anybody else on that email, okay? This is just the subject line of your email that you would then send out. and then you could add in general notes for that email. If you wanted to add in custom email notes for each individual vendor, there's a free form text field over here on the right-hand side of my screen where you could add in those notes, okay? From there, all you'd have to do is just select. You can also use the Mark All button if you're going to send these to multiple vendors, and it'll send them each an individual remittance form with a PDF of the information of the bill that you just paid, okay? Once you click submit, it's going to go through this whole refresh process again. It's usually a little bit quicker with payment notifications. And the beauty of this too is once you email this payment notification, it will store it on the vendor record under the communication sub-tab. It should add different files and things like that, or messages. We can see right here, it'll add an attachment as well. So this will get stored right on your vendor record. Okay. So now that that no longer says refresh, we know that the email payment notification went through. Okay. So this is how you process EFT payments within NetSuite. Okay. Now let's say we wanted to do positive pay for our checks. Again, I went ahead and I created some bills. One is an issued check and one is a void check, right? So this is just the bill of one of them. Again, like I said, if we're going to issue a check, we just need to uncheck this for electronic bank payment checkbox. Okay. Then the only difference here is we do have to create the bill payment. All right. So generally from the bill, you can't see it here because I've already created it. You can pay it straight from the bill by clicking the accept payment button, or you can come down to transactions, payables. And then if you were going to do it for a single vendor, you could click pay single vendor, or if you were going to do multiple bills for multiple different vendors, you could click pay bills right here. Okay. Again, I've already created this bill payment, and we want to make sure that this for electronic bank payment checkbox is unchecked. All right. As long as we have a check number associated with the bill payment, then it should populate in your positive pay queue. Okay. So we're going to hop over there. Again, to get there, we go to payments, checks, and then positive pay right here. I've pulled this up in another screen. It's going to pull up this blank form. So from here, all we have to do is we need to select the bank account. Anything that has checks associated with it should populate down below. And while this loads, we do have some other filters that we can search for, right? So if we have a bunch of checks that we need to issue positive pay for, you can do the date from and date to refine your results. We also have the check from and check to. These are the check numbers, okay? So you can also refine your results quickly with the check from and check to filters. You can also include void checks, and you can exclude cleared checks as well in this positive pay format, okay? So we're just waiting on the system to load and add any transactions down here. Again, apologies, this is a demo account, so it is a little bit slower. In no way is this reflective of the actual SuiteApp, okay? So like I mentioned, I added one issued bill. I've also added a voided bill as well. So I'm gonna change the check from and to. And once I did that, we can see that it switches, and we can see we have one issued check and one void check. And down beneath here, you'll see the date that this was voided. Up here, we see there's one transaction for the payment amount. This is for your issued check. And then lastly, your void check, we see a count on how many void checks and the void payment amount. All right. Once we have this, we can go ahead and we can click submit. And what this is going to do, very similar to EFT, it's going to pull up a payment file administration screen where it goes through that process, right? Where in the background, it's starting to create that format. It's marking the payments for processing, and it's going to create the output of the positive pay. Okay, so we can see now starting to create that payment file. We can see the different check numbers that we included in this output. So let's refresh this one more time. Okay. And again, you can always roll this back if you make a mistake, but here under the file reference, we see our preview. If we click on this, based on the file format that we selected on our company bank details, this is our output. So again, you can download this and you can go ahead and upload it straight to your bank. Okay. All right, guys. So that's very quickly our EFT as well as positive pay demo. Again, I'd like to kind of state, if you guys have any questions or concerns on this, reach out to Robin. She'll most likely get me or another team member involved. We'd love to have a conversation with you. If this is something that you'd like to maybe move off of a third party or even try and keep everything under one house.